Okay, so guys, now that we've kind of established what we mean by an aggregated object and the expression of an aggregated object, the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is the idea of lines acting as a means of organizing something. Okay? So all of you had to create some elements that are long like this, right? And these things are essentially a thickened line of sorts. Yours are a little bit longer than this. These were the last version of this project's version. So yours are a little longer. So what we want you guys to do is understand that if you use these things to create connections and you use these things to organize the elements that you guys are going to be connecting, right, that they will provide a visual structure for how things look. All right? And what you guys are going to do is you are going to explore 3 different conditions. You are going to explore one condition, which we will call a vertical crossing. Okay? So this is an example of a vertical crossing. It has one horizontal element and a vertical element coming across it. You will be doing a second one. Let me move this one over, where you will be doing a horizontal crossing. And that horizontal crossing could be with the 2 elements crossing in this fashion, or the 2 elements crossing in that fashion. Okay? So the 2 are very closely related. One of them is laid down on its side, the other one is sort of stood up. All right? If it was exactly the same thing, it might be something along the lines of that, or that, or that. Okay? So any questions thus far? So vertical crossing, horizontal crossing. And finally, the third version of this, and I'm going to have to move these this direction, is going to be a further expression of a line. Okay? And the way that we do that is by taking both of these and putting them so that they're heading in the same direction. So these 3 objects are going to form, right, let's call it the organizational idea for what your final aggregated object is going to look like. Does that make sense? All right. So each of you is going to have to do an iteration of each of these. Okay? How many minutes are we at, Mitchell?
We are at...
It's usually at the bottom.
2:59, 3 minutes.
2:59. Okay, so what I'm going to do is set these to the side now. Okay, and I'm going to start with a condition where I'm taking the vertical crossings, and I'm going to take all of my required pieces and place them in relationship to that organizational element. Okay, so you guys were required to do 3 of these. Actually, I'm going to lay them down, doesn't matter. You were required to do 3 of these. And you should immediately, your mind should be saying, there's 3 of those and 3 of those, so maybe there's a relationship there. And then you were required to do 4 of these rectangular cubes. Okay? So that is all the pieces that you guys should have today and the pieces that you have to work with. So another thing that I want to talk to you about is our prior discussion about symmetry. Okay? There is nothing wrong with symmetry, but symmetry is highly overused. The example that I gave you guys is that when you were about 5 years old, a little kid, you pretty much had mastered the idea of simple symmetry. Okay? So if a 5-year-old can master that, then wouldn't you think that somebody that's going into a design career might be able to achieve higher than that, might be able to think higher than that? And so what I want to talk to you guys about is, why do people immediately rely on symmetry? Well, it makes things feel organized, right? If I take this and I put it like that, and I do these here and these here, and I put one of those there and one of those there, it's got this immediate organization, right? It's like, yeah, look how organized that is. It's the same from one side to the other. Is that not sort of what you guys sort of think about when you guys immediately react? Or not react, but you kind of express organization in this fashion? It's easy. I can do it without really almost thinking practically. Okay, so the idea of using lines to organize things is no different than the idea of using symmetry to organize them. Symmetry implies a line of axes and everything being the same from one side to the other. By using lines, right, you're doing the same thing. Now, those lines could be set up symmetrically, right? But they don't have to be. We're looking just for the heck of it to explore the idea of asymmetry and potentially the idea of asymmetrical balance. Okay? And so what you guys are going to be doing with this is you're going to be using this to provide the organization, let's call it. One other thing that we talked to you guys and built that we want to build upon from your subtraction exercise is the idea of repetition. The idea of exact repetition. Okay? For some reason, it seems to be almost universal that students view exact repetition as monotonous. When I think of the Lloyd's of London building, I don't think of it as monotonous, and yet it has a massive amount of exact repetition. Take a look at it.
Should we look at it on the screen?
But let me kind of finish the thought.
Okay.
And yes, we can pull it up on the screen. Okay? The idea that something is repetitive is only boring when you put it in a simplistic, colloquial context. Oh, it's all the same. Anybody ever see a show called Weeds? You have? None of you? Weeds? I think it's called Weeds. Right? And it talks about, there's a song from the, I think it's from the 40s, about ticky-tacky boxes and stuff like that. And it shows all these kind of robot men walking out to their black SUVs and all backing out of the driveway. Right? And that is this horrid thought of sameness. But if you look at it, it's not symmetrical. Right? The streets aren't exactly symmetrical. Everything is kind of, you know, rotated along streets, and the cars are going in different directions. So the idea that repetition is boring is only colloquial. It's only something that you guys have only explored in sort of maybe one direction. Repetition can be very, very interesting. Okay? So what I want to try and cover right now is going to be how do we use the idea of repetition and the use of these bar-like linear elements to create a composition that is very organized and very expressive of an organization. So I think this is probably far enough. So why don't you call up the Lloyd's of London thing? I'll point this at it, particularly the stair towers.
Oh, it's got to be Pinterest.
No, not Pinterest.
There it is. That's close. But we need the lights off.
Yeah, there it is.
So let's turn the lights off so you guys can see it.
Okay, so there it is in the corner over there. I don't know if the camera can see it very well.
Let me pull it out.
So there it is. Okay, that building, right, has a massive amount of repetition. That building has a lot of asymmetrical conditions. And that building, by most people's sort of estimation, is not as monotonous as a simple glass tower. of the same scale. Okay? So
maybe we should veer a little bit into constructivism, which you brought up earlier and was very influential on Richard Rogers, Sir Richard Rogers.
So why don't we start another video, and then you can give a discussion on that. If you're gonna go, let's go stop this video.